As always, the Minding Your Business podcast is brought to you by the Binge Podcast Network. The Binge is at www.onabinge.com. Myself and Dominic Lawson are co-founders last year, and it's continuing to grow. We're continuing to see great progress. Thank you for the feedback. For those that have subscribed to our mailing list, make sure you do that at onabinge.com to get access to exclusive content, as well as access to new episodes of all the Binge podcast shows, everything from Let's Be Real to The Startup Life to this very podcast to Nothing But Buckets, Just Blurtin', Racially Motivated Podcast, and on and on. So you want to make sure you get access to those new episodes. In order to do that, you need to go to onabinge.com. Of course, we're brought to you by Legacy Living Real Estate Partners. If you're interested in being a real estate investor, so typically you have to have great credit, a whole lot of money in the bank, and that sort of thing. Times are changing, and you have an opportunity to quote unquote buy back the block. If you want to do that without using your cash and credit and be able to get 3 paydays on every deal that you do, that's different than your real estate agent. Your real estate agent does a lot of work on the front end. They get a license. They're great. They're phenomenal at what they do. But they get a license and they don't get paid unless there's a closing. No closing, no mas. Okay? As an investor, you get paid in 3 different areas, from an initial deposit to a monthly income stream to a big payout at closing. So if you're interested in that, make sure that you email me, ronbrooks901@gmail.com. Listen, today is episode number 93. And we're going to get to a very important topic that's going to be near and dear to everybody's heart, particularly as we get into this graduation season. But first, you know what we do.
What we do here is go back.
So, I'm your host, Champ Ron. This is the Minding Your Business podcast, coming to you episode number 93, Friday, May the 10th, 2019, from Memphis, Tennessee. So glad that you could join me on today. I hope that your week has been great for you personally and professionally, and that you're ready to get into some great content today on the podcast. Shout out to everybody that's on Facebook Live. Shout out to those that are on Spreaker Live. Thank you so much for joining. I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the inboxes and all the support for this podcast. We're inching closely to episode number 100, and so that should be happening this summer. I'm very excited about that. I'm very excited about some of the new podcasts that I'm hearing coming out and people that are interested in it. So all that's just phenomenal and just continues to move the movement, so to speak. So today's topic will be the talent divide, the brain drain. Many cities around the country are experiencing loss of talent. And there's something that needs to be done about that, because it affects a lot of what goes on around the country, and it affects a lot of things civically, it affects a lot of things economically, affects a lot of things socially around the country when you have talent and you have educated people that move from one area of the country to the other in any kind of mass level. So we want to talk about that today on the podcast. I want to share a little bit about some information that came out as it relates to the brain drain. Law, what's going on, my brother? How you doing? So we want to get into a little bit of that today. So let's go ahead and get started. So this week I came across some information that related to how talented and skilled Americans are moving around the country. And this has been going on probably for forever, but certainly since around 1970, there's been a mass movement of people all around. People have moved suburban, people have moved back to urban cores, and whatnot. We've seen that very much here in Memphis, of how population flight and things like that can take place. Several episodes ago last year, I had my guy Darren on, and we talked about Memphis burning. We talked about the history of how real estate was used to segment people out of certain communities and whatnot, and the racial divides that came along with that, and how that was played up from the United States government all the way down. But now what we're seeing is a drain of talent from particular cities. And in a lot of the information, it talks about, how highly educated, highly motivated, highly positioned people are leaving certain areas of the country. And what we're seeing around the country, and there was some data that was done by the Social Capital Project of U.S. Congress Joint Economic Committee that was done here recently. And they basically put up a map, and it's on our website. They put up a map called the Gross Brain Drain, and it's taking data from 2017. And what it's showing is that people are moving from kind of the Rust Belt areas of the United States, the Great Plains, parts of the Midwest, and particularly the upper Midwest, and even some parts in the Deep South, where talent is making the conscious decision to move and go to other areas of the country. So you might ask, well, why is that? Why do people leave some of these smaller towns that are known for their hospitality? They're known for being highly connected and whatnot. So why are they leaving? Well, the number one cognitive reason that they're leaving is they're going to places where jobs are a little bit more plentiful, particularly around some of the high growth areas of technology and whatnot. If you ever go out to San Francisco, you'll be able to see a lot of billionaires are being created in San Francisco. Why? Because of technology. So the growth in technology, and so what do you mean by technology? There's the growth. Technology, I've always had my own personal view. So here's a Ronism that I'm going to give y'all around technology. Here's a Ronism. Technology is used, or should be used, to reduce the cost, and cost meaning whether it's financially, whether it's particularly even more so with time, mundane or kind of routine transactions, routine actions. Those should be taken care of by technology. What technology should not do, and again, this is Iranism, technology should not be to replace the human heart, because technology won't ever do that. Technology is based on algorithm and calculation. It's based on predicting behavior. But the human heart goes beyond that. So the technology is not designed to do that. Although they'll try with artificial intelligence, and they'll scare people with articles and things like that about how machines are going to take over this and take over that. At the end of the day, there's no replacement for the human heart. You can simulate some of the human mind, but you're not able to simulate, even through artificial intelligence, you're not able to simulate the human heart. So that's kind of my Ronism real quick around technology. But technology is what's fueling this brain drain, because people are going to places where they're going back to these urban cores where they can be a little bit more efficient, a little bit more economical with their lifestyle. And that's where jobs, and then what people don't understand, even from the entrepreneurship standpoint, is where jobs are is where it's going to create the business. That's why career development and being in tune with the job market is so important, because even if you're a business owner, where people work is where industry is going to go, where big business is going to go. And what's going to go along with big business is going to be small business, solopreneurs, and everything else. All right. So you got to keep your finger on that particular pulse. But what we're seeing with the brain drain is, one, people are going where technology is. And so where is technology? I mentioned San Francisco earlier. So California as a state is one. Lorenzo, what's going on, man? Yasmin, how you doing? Thank you for joining. Jamisha, what's going on, Sora? How you doing? What's up? Liv, what's up, girl? How you doing? Yeah, shout out my folks there on Facebook Live. But California is one area, and then you got the East and West Coast, right? People moving to California, people moving to New York, people moving to DC, Boston, Connecticut, some of those areas up there. And then you've got Texas, which is always going to be kind of a booming state. You've got growing tech along with oil business that's been sustained there for many decades. And so you've got people moving around. You know what I mean? El, what's up, brother? How you doing? You've got people moving around the country on this brain drain. And so if you've got children right now, some of y'all are graduating, and shout out to everybody that's graduating. I don't care what level you're graduating at. If you're graduating, shout out to you. For the vast majority of you, unless you're in that college scandal with the chick from Full House or whatever, you and your children have worked hard to get where you are. Because I know all y'all don't have $5 million to try to buy your way into no college. Some of y'all owe $5 million probably in student loans, but we ain't gonna get into that. But you've worked very hard to get to where you are, where you're graduating. And now you're finding that people, like you say, they're moving to the coast to get these jobs and to start these businesses, because not only are the tech businesses and all that located on the coast, that's where the investors are. And a lot of some of the older banks and things like that have located and developed, business locations on the coast. So what you're seeing is kind of the middle part of the country. And listen, I'm going to be in Nebraska and Kansas on next week, so I'm gonna see it firsthand. I'm actually going to be visiting banks in Nebraska and in Kansas. Shout out to my guy Gerald Jones with the Buy Black podcast. I hope to get a chance to connect with him while I'm in Omaha. But they're seeing in a lot of those cities, just the drain of their youth. Growing up, going to school, graduating, and then going off. Either they go off to school, they don't ever come back, or they may go to school there locally, but then they're leaving, going to the coast, and they're not coming back. So you're losing that talent, and you're not retaining it back. Along with that, and I didn't even bring the statistics for this, but you're seeing now people, let me just say it plain, without all the science and all that, people just not having children the way that they used to in previous decades and with previous generations. People are just not having the children. So the birth rate is dropping. And so, I talked to somebody in higher education just this week, and she was saying that, Ron, I can't recruit students who hadn't been born yet. And I was like, wow. Yeah, I guess that's true. Good or bad or indifferent, I guess that's true. You can't recruit people that haven't been born, that don't exist. And so you're starting to have that. And even when I'm working with banks and senior communities, people don't know that the population trend is heading towards, in 2035, in this country, in the United States, there are going to be more people age 65 and older than youth. All right? So you've got all these things working, when you're heading towards an older population, and then you've got large populations of people living in certain areas. Now you've got roughly about 65 million people that live in the middle of the country, outside of the coast. That's a lot of people. All right. What's up, Nina? How you doing? That's a lot of people. Okay. So, so cities aren't going to just die off. But what they've got to be able to do is be able to reinvent themselves. And so we talked about, okay, so what's the problem? The problem is you've got this brain drain. You've got talented people that are leaving your city. Okay, they're going to San Francisco, New York. They're going to Atlanta. They're going to, New Jersey. They're going to Connecticut, wherever it is that they're going. So now what do you do if you're not one of those cities? Well, even first before that, what do you do if you are one of those cities? Because you're gonna have another issue that's gonna come when you start getting oversaturated and overpopulated. Okay, but if you're one of these cities that you're losing talent, so your net is off. You've got more talent going out than you've got coming in. That's either being born or that's moving there. Because that's one of the two ways you're getting people. You're getting people either by you're birthing them, or someone else has birthed them and they've become of age and they're moving there. All right. One of the challenges we have here in Memphis is those two things. Memphis is starting to age because even given the social economic status here in Memphis, you're starting to see a slowing birth rate. And then Memphis is not attracting young talent, not near to the rate of some other cities. I mean, we are, but not to the same rate. And so if that trend continues, then the city's going to have its challenges in doing that. Memphis has a lot of good things going for it, though. We've got land, for one. We've got although it rains like hell here all the time, we do have a pretty good climate. We don't get a ton of snow. We don't get a ton of, tornadoes. We don't get, we're not on the coast where we're getting hurricane action and that sort of thing. And you can get to a lot of places within an 8-hour drive from Memphis. There's so many cities you can get to. I mean, you can get to Indianapolis, you can get to Chicago, you can get to St. Louis, you can get to Little Rock, Arkansas, you can get to Dallas, Texas, you can get to New Orleans, you can get to Birmingham, Alabama, Atlanta, Georgia, Nashville, Tennessee, you can get to Louisville. I mean, there's a lot of places you can get to with an 8-hour drive from Memphis, Tennessee. Jasmine, what's going on, girl? How you doing? I was shouting out Nothing But Buckets earlier. Make sure that y'all are checking out Nothing But Buckets as Jasmine jumps on, one of the hosts of the Nothing But Buckets podcast right here on the Binge podcast network. That's how we say that. So you've got this drain in these small cities. So I've got kind of my own thoughts on how you reverse this trend. Because if you don't reverse the trend, you're going to have cities in the Midwest die off. And some of these cities are very important to politically, how we vote, right? Because if you've got changes in population, and if you're not changing how political lines are drawn, that can affect electoral college and things like that. And y'all remember, y'all hopefully hadn't forgot 2016. Y'all have seen how screwing around with political lines and shifts in population can affect elections at all different levels, right up to the presidential election. All right. So these things have a bearing on how we operate. They have a bearing on how resources come into a community or go out from a community, how much of a resource you receive. A lot of that's based on, the population makeup. And so one of the things that I'm looking for, and I've seen a few cities do this, but one of the things even from Memphis that I've been screaming from the mountaintops for probably as long as I've been able to scream when I wasn't a baby, but old enough to be able to formulate words. You've got to incentivize the right behavior. And that's a sales term, so forgive me for putting that out. But you incentivize the right behavior. If there's a certain behavior that you want, whether it's for yourself, it's for your children, you got to incentivize the right behaviors. And so one of the ways that you incentivize people to move to your town is you got to focus on your strengths. Memphis, we don't do a great job of that. We don't do a great job of focusing. We limit our strengths to, Graceland, Elvis, and, we limit it to these, kind of one-offs, that are unique to us, but they're not you don't move to Memphis because Graceland's here. Nobody gives a damn. You don't move here because, Bass Pro's in the Pyramid or because of this and that. You're looking at quality of life. You're looking at what's the opportunity for your business, for your job, for both, whatever that is. You're looking at education, and you're looking at overall quality of life, your environment. How can you live, work, and play in a particular city? So that's, at a high level, what you're looking at. So you've got to incentivize that. So how do you incentivize that? I've been screaming this for years. People have been whining about student loans for decades now. I don't understand. Now, again, I'm not looking at the economics of it. I'm not a CFO sitting here looking at, that's a pencil neck looking at numbers. What I will say is, one of the incentives I think that Memphis can do, and many of the other cities that are even smaller, is help people with the concerns that they have. Student loans is one of them. So your highly educated, talented workforce, they're having to pay back student loans. All right. Those could be anywhere from $10,000, $15,000 all the way up to the six figures, right? Depending on how long you went to school, what school, blah, blah, blah. What I advise cities to do is have a program, because cities have other problems, right? Particularly urban cores and things like that. You've got homelessness, you've got hunger, you've got cleanliness issues. You've got a lot of things that your city in budget is having to go towards to keep, to try to build up. Well, people can get involved in that. It's as simple as, listen, I'll use me for example. So Ron, we want to retain you in Memphis, or we want you to consider relocating here to Memphis. So here's what we're going to do. You owe, $80,000 to the United States government for a student loan because you got a student loan and blah, blah, blah from going to the University of Memphis. All right. We want you to be able to come back and invest. So here's what we do. We'll waive your student loan, Ron, but we want you to come back and do some community service here. So when you come back here, we want you involved in helping keeping streets clean and helping with mentorship and doing different things that we need to continue to grow the population and to make the city attractive. We want you attending events. We want you promoting events. We want you to all these different things. What's up, Daniel Watson? What's going on, brother? How you doing? But that's what it's about. So incentivizing people, if people knew that, I don't care what city you in. I mean, just about. Now, you're going to have a problem if you're one of these cities that's always 40 below zero and all that kind of stuff. I feel for you. But if you're, reasonable, people will move there. If you could get a student loan waived or significantly reduced, that opens up a whole Pandora's box of opportunities for your city. Because think about it. If you're paying $3, $4, $6, $8, $1,000, $1,200 a month in student loans, think about what that can do for people when you put that back in people's pockets, particularly on any kind of mass level. Now, again, I'm not talking, I haven't gone through the economic analysis and all that. So someone may do that and come back and say, well, Ron, this going to cost us, blah, blah, blah. You spend money on everything else that you want. And I'll speak for Memphis. Every time we want to build a sports stadium, or we find money for what we want. Yeah, we do. We find money for what we want. And we don't find money for what we don't want. Yeah. We find money for everything we want. Every time, if FedEx just, make a, threat that they're going to leave, we find the money. You know what I mean? Somebody big and prominent wants to rehab a building, we find the money. And I'm sure other cities are probably like that too. We find the money. But when it comes down to, getting people off the street, getting homeless people off the street, that costs too much. We can't do that. We don't have enough whatever, not enough resources, not blah, blah, blah. But it comes to educating children, pre-K, we got to try to find the money, blah, blah, blah. We could never find the money. But let the Grizz make a threat to leave FedEx Forum and go to Seattle. Let John Calipari make a threat to go to University of Kentucky. We find the money all of a sudden. Jessica Wright, how you doing, girl? What's going on? So we've got to get to a point where we're investing in the right areas. And that's one area is in student lending. If you can, either have some sort of reimbursement or some sort of, we'll just cover the whole damn thing, with your investment in here. So you just got to find what that trade-off is. But if you do that on some mass level, you will begin to attract those type of people. Because right now, the reason the birth rate's low is because everything else is high. I've told y'all, my wife and I, we paid $540 a week for daycare for 3 people. No, I ain't say a month. I said a week. Yeah, somebody on Spreaker was talking about, oh, was that a month? No, sir. That was a week. That's a car note a week. Most people pay car note $540 a week. That was a week. A week, yeah. So guess what? Y'all ain't have no children. No, and there's different birth control things and whatnot, but people just not having children like that. So it's slowing all this other stuff down. You know what I mean? But one of the things that incentivizes those people to then do those things is when they don't have to pay $1,200 a month to Sally Mae. You get Sally Mae off their payroll, and they'll go do those things. So you got to incentivize. Same way you did after World War II. You've incentivized. And that created businesses, that created the suburbs, that created the expressway, that created a lot of things that you see in this country right now. All started right after World War II, for the most part. And then you couple that with the technological advances. But start with student lending. Number 2, housing is the next big thing. So what's another bill? Think of the bills that people have. What are the big bills that people have? Student loans, housing. If you're like us, at one point in time, then daycare. Daycare was my biggest bill, y'all, a few years ago. I paid more in daycare than I paid in my mortgage. I paid more in daycare than I did for both my cars. Had one year we paid $25,000 just in daycare. Our biggest bill, by far. So if you move, and I'll get to that even more here in just a second, but housing is right up there. So affordable housing is an issue all around this country. So one of the things that I would recommend to prevent brain drain and to attract talent to a city is look at your housing, look at your HUD situation and look at your housing and determine that you're going to help people, because if you help people with their housing, right, and it's whether you can give some kind of credit towards, you've got down payment assistance and all that type of thing, but you've got to have some kind of incentive for housing. And listen, they can't all be in just always the urban core per se. Have it sprinkled around your city so that you get the benefit around the city. Some cities, they try to stick it all in one place as far as that type of housing incentive. Spread that out across your city and across your county. And, those are things that will attract that kind of talent to move back or to even relocate to your city, is, some kind of housing incentive. So third, after you talk about housing, then it's going to be what type of industry is there. And that's going to, that's high up there, but I'm talking about it third. You got to have some type of industry in your city. So how do you attract industry? You attract industry with people. All right. And you got to have the right mix of people. One of the challenges that Memphis has, and people don't like to talk about it, but you've got a large population of people that are educated very homogeneously, which means that they got a lot of the same skill sets. They got a lot of the same experiences. And that experience tends to center around warehousing. All right. So when you're in other industries, other companies, it's difficult for you to see the opportunity. Think about it from an entrepreneur standpoint. You're coming here, you come to Memphis, and you need to hire 2,000 people. And you need them to be educated on, whatever the, computer program or computer science, are you going to find those people here? And the answer, most people will tell you, is no. You're not going to find 2,000 people that are trained with, say a bachelor/master's degree in, computer science if you need that many people in that one area. So then Memphis is not going to be a place you're going to locate to. Okay? Not so. You've got to look at it from the standpoint of where the people are. And so you've got to be able to have the people. So that's why I mentioned these first two things first, because you got to have the people. Right? So you got to have the people. What's up, Jeff? Cousin Lisa, what's going on? You got to have the people. All right? So the quality of life, the housing, the student loans, that brings the people. And along with that, you got to have the industry. Memphis has industry. We've got Fortune 500 companies here, which is more than what some cities can say. If you're in the middle of Kansas or Nebraska, or you're in North and South Dakota, some of these towns, you don't have that type of industry like that. Memphis has industry, and Memphis is unique because we're in a tri-state area, so we are wedged against other states that we've got to compete with. That's why I get these people that, they want to big up. And there's nothing wrong. Nashville's done their thing. Atlanta's done their thing. But they don't compete with other states. There's no state bordering them. They're on islands in the middle of states. Like Atlanta sits smack dab in the middle of Georgia. They don't compete with anybody. Nashville sits in the middle. They're the capital. They don't compete with anybody. Nashville would be different if it was up against the Kentucky border or up against, some border of some other state where you've got to communicate with them, and, your businesses can say, oh, well, F you, I'll go across the state line and pay half the price. And they've got, 2,000 acres of land, that I can build on, or, 100,000 acres of land that I can build my whole complex on. You know what I mean? So that makes a difference in your city. But when you're these small cities like that, or you're landlocked like how Memphis is, in the sense of you're wedged between other states, then you've got to be good at bringing the people to bring the industry. I had an episode last year where I talked about I think the call center industry would do very well here in Memphis. I think you've got the built-in skill set. Call center industry pays a little bit higher salary wage than many of the other industries, certainly the ones that are here now. They tend to hire a lot more full-time positions than a lot of the industry that's here in Memphis now. And so I think the call center industry would do well. So go back and check that episode out. I don't remember the episode number, but y'all go back and check that out. But you've got student lending, you've got housing, you've got the industry / the people. Then you've got to get into the quality of life. And the other things help shape the quality of life. But one of the challenges we have here in Memphis, and I talked about how cities promote themselves and support and promote their strengths. And we don't do a good job of that because we love drama. We love crime. And we blame the news stations. And I was talking to my wife the other day because on one of the news stations, there was a fire at an apartment complex downtown, right? So, I'm sitting there watching this. For 30 minutes, they're talking about this. Now, there's fires in buildings, unfortunately, here in Memphis, a good bit. We keep our fire department busy. But they don't spend 30 minutes when there's a fire in South Memphis. But then when there's a fire at an apartment complex downtown, and listen, any one of them should be covered. Either you should cover all of them for 30 minutes or cover none of them but when it's downtown, they act like it's Armageddon because that's not part of the plan. So when it goes against the plan, people start freaking out, start talking like the Joker in The Dark Knight. But yeah, so for 30 minutes, they sat there and talked about one apartment complex that was burning. A house or 2 or 3 burned down in Orange Mound, they give that 15 seconds. Just long enough to tell you it happened. So that's one of Memphis's challenges is, that the point I'm making is we don't do a good job of promoting ourselves. You know what we'll do in Memphis? If we don't have enough crime to report, we'll report other cities' crimes. Yeah, we'll go and report another city's crimes. Somebody got robbed and stabbed in New Orleans. Hell, this man, why are we reporting that? So we don't have enough to report on, and we're part of the problem as people, because the reason they report it is because that's what we click and put our eyes on. What we like, click, share, and comment on. Like go to one of the news stations' Facebook pages. If a kid graduates and gets 10 scholarships, that gets one number of amount of engagement. A kid gets shot in an accident or something like that, it gets 10 times the engagement. What's up, Mario? Philip Ashley Ricks, what's going on, brother? But yeah, so that's how we look at crime here a lot of times in Memphis. Most of it's not random. Most of it people know who they dealing with. And we just don't know how, or a lot of our population hasn't learned how to manage conflict, to manage emotion, to manage disappointment, to manage embarrassment. A lot of our population hasn't quite learned how to constructively do that. So we cuss each other out. Someone pulls out a knife, other person pulls out a gun, and then here go the news right at 10 o'clock. Boom, they start the news off. Before they even introduce who the hell they are, they're already telling you about some crime somewhere. But in a lot of other cities, they, like for instance in Florida, who's got a good bit of crime, they don't report their crime like that. Why? Because it's gonna scare off the tourists and the seniors that are moving down there to retire. That's the last thing you want to be talking about is a bunch of crime. So they just don't report it. So you don't report it, you don't know. So you don't know to be scared of it. Here in Memphis, people live in Memphis the whole time. They don't even have their car even attempted to be broken into. They live here their whole life and they be scared of crime. Too much crime, Ron. It's too much crime, Ron. They need to work on the crime. And you live in Germantown somewhere and you've never had, you know what I mean? You don't even come into the city unless to go to a Grizzlies game or to go to work. Or to go to a gala. Or to pass through, to drive into Arkansas, to go somewhere else. But because we report crime so much and it's such a big topic, it's a big thing. And so there are cities that have that same problem. Memphis isn't the only one, but I'm just giving you an example of we've got to work on the lifestyle. So if you're going to attract people and attract talent and people that are going to raise families, be involved in the school, hold neighborhoods accountable, give civically to nonprofits, start businesses, hire people. Those type of population of people are going to come based on your lifestyle. So what's the lifestyle? You can't just sit and talk about crime all the time. You got to focus on your strengths. And then part of my bringing industry presentation on this is you've got to attract industry that then people can be a part of, that then leads up to spinoffs. So it's like a really good show, right? Really good sitcom or something. There's always a spinoff. Sometimes spinoff's good, sometimes it sucks. But there's a spinoff nonetheless. The spinoff is you create lifestyle attractions. One of the challenges with Memphis is there's not lifestyle attractions for, I'll get this granular with it. You've got to have things in your city that are affordable, that a family of four can come and enjoy at least once a month. And not have to get a loan or eat sardines to do it. So how can a family of four, no matter what part of the city that you live in, how can a family of four come and enjoy some attraction or something going on in your city? A large park, some museum, some aquarium, some set of, area that's got shopping and events and stuff going on. You've got to have something that attracts a family of four. Because if it attracts a family of four, it'll attract a family of three. And a family of two and a family of one. So you got to have these things. Memphis has short on this, and these smaller towns. So some of these towns have great, festivals and things like that. You got to promote that. Share with these people, these talented people, that, hey, you can come and you can be a big fish in a pond. You don't have to be a guppy in the ocean. You can come here and be a big fish. Come here, you can raise your family, and you can get involved if you want to. So you got to create the lifestyle that's family oriented. That's one of my disappointments with having Bass Pro in the Pyramid. That easily could have been something that's much more of an attraction. They took the low hanging fruit on that, and it is what it is. But you've got to have the family type attraction. So a family of 4. If it's affordable for a family of 4. Now, I'm not a family, I'm a family of 5. But if it's a family of 4, right? If it's attractive and it's affordable enough for them to come once a month for your local people, because now then you attract the tourists and things like that. But you've got to have it such that the family of 4 can come and enjoy it once a month. And it's got to be affordable, meaning that you can get into it for under $100 for a family of 4. And if you can't do that, you're not going to attract people to come down here if all your attractions and you're a family of 4 and it's going to cost you $150, $200 just to walk in the damn door. Ain't going to happen. All right? Ain't going to happen. Okay? So what you've got to do is you've got to have those attractions that make part of the lifestyle. They got to be for adults, you got to have them for children, and you got to have it where adults and children can enjoy it together. To whatever scale, right? If you're Memphis and you want to be a major league city, that's what you got to do. All right? If you're Walla Walla, Kansas, and your population's 10, 15,000, then you've got to go maybe a different route to attract people. But, those other things that I mentioned, the incentives around student lending, the incentives around housing, the incentives around industry, and then the incentives around lifestyle, those are things that you got to invest in if you're these cities. Because where the brain drain's taking place the most, the Midwest, Illinois, particularly outside of Chicago, Minnesota. Now, think about what you were seeing in the news from them during the wintertime. You saw what the weather was looking like with that polar vortex coming through. That was real. I can tell you, I spent a little time in Michigan in the wintertime. Parts of Michigan, since I mentioned them. Missouri, South Dakota, Vermont, New Hampshire, some of these areas. Even some of the ones that are, starting to, somewhat kind of in between. I mean, Colorado is growing. Nevada is growing. But Arizona's not. Arizona's losing population. Arkansas is losing population. But then Mississippi's mostly growing. A lot of that is from North Mississippi and then Southern Mississippi. The middle section around Jackson isn't really growing as much. Birmingham's starting to pick up some momentum. Atlanta does what it does. Of course, North Carolina, South Carolina. The Carolinas are starting to pick up some, particularly around, that Raleigh-Durham area. Charlotte's done what it's done. Columbia, South Carolina, which is where my folks are from, it's picking up. You're getting a little bit of tech entrepreneurial things going on there. My cousin Lisa probably could speak to that more. She's there in South Carolina, and she's on Facebook Live, so she could probably speak to that environment a little bit more. But some of these states and these cities, they're losing people quickly, and when you got drops in population, talented population, and you've got an aging population, that I'm telling you, that math is just not gonna go. Sis Shay Brown, what's going on? Pearl Walker, how you doing? Faith, what's going on, girl? How you doing? What's up? Marcus Young, what's up? So that's what you got with this brain drain. And so we've got to work towards, we being, those of us that are, necessarily not in government and that sort of thing, we've got to be working towards how do we get people to come back, and how do we hold our means of production, which is our politics, accountable to working collaboratively with us to provide these type of incentives. Because you got to incentivize. People aren't going to just come on their own. You got to incentivize people. When you have a sales team, right? You better be incentivizing them. You can't just say, just go spend all this time and just go sell, and we just go give you an attaboy or an attagirl. Hell no, it doesn't work. You got to have an incentive. What's that nugget incentive for me to go that extra mile? It's just the way human psyche works. So think about that. If you're in your city and you're listening to this podcast, think about and share with me some ways. Hit me up on social media at Champ Ron. You can email me, Ron at the MYB podcast, and let's continue the discussion and share with me some ways in your city of maybe some things that you're seeing that the city has done or is currently doing or is looking to do. I'd love to hear some more of those ideas, and let's see how we can get involved holistically, again, to help slow this down. Because I know there's some people listening to this and y'all think that, as long as I just sit on Twitter and do my thing, don't nobody bother me, and I can get on Facebook and, talk about and whine about Ayesha Curry all week and, all this other stuff. But I'm just telling you, your job, your industry, your business, everything is going to be closely tied to what happens with the brain drain, because you're going to continue to get older. I know sometimes people think that they're always going to be 25. You're not always going to be 25, and your environment is not always going to be what it's always been. It's going to evolve too. And when you are in a declining area, it affects everything. You've got a nonprofit and you're looking to get donors. You're not going to have donors with a lot of people that are living check to check and worried about putting bread on the table that night. You're just not. Your church, if your membership is just a lot of people that are just not economically strong enough, then that's going to decline. So you've got to get involved. It's not about putting people down. It's not about classism. It's not about, you got to start getting involved seriously with that economic development piece, which is providing the incentives to bring people back. Because what happens is you bring the people back and you're educating the people, that rises up your city. And the cities that are doing that, and the cities that did that coming out of the 60s and 70s, that's where they are. That's how you get Dallas. That's how you got Nashville now. That's how you got Atlanta. A lot of different factors, of course, right? And then there's some advantages that they have. But one thing that you have to do is you got to have the incentives, you got to make it friendly to do business and to come live, work, and play. All right? So continue that discussion with me. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your ideas, whether you agree, disagree, good, bad, and ugly. I'd love to hear it all. So make sure that you get with me at Chap Ron. All right? So now let's get into Ron's rundown real quick, because I got something to get with y'all on with that. I got a little bone to pick. All right, so Ron's rundown. Let me start by let me dig into the Ayesha Curry thing, because I know some of y'all are sweating and chomping at the bit. Some of y'all won't even listen to nothing if it's not talking about Ayesha Curry this week. So Ayesha Curry did the interview with Jada Pinkett Smith this week, and let me admit something for me, right? Because one of the things that I know people don't do is they're not going to admit from their end. They're always right. They're always the victim. Let me admit something that I did with this initially that wasn't right with this Ayesha Curry story. And I'll talk about the business of it too. Because some people like to put you in the box and say you can't talk about nothing unless it's blah, 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 whatever. So initially, you see the headline of, her comments around wanting attention from men and how that ties to her husband and blah, blah, blah. And I'm guilty of. I looked at the headline and made assumptions from that. I didn't watch the whole interview initially. And most of y'all on Facebook, y'all don't do that. You do the same thing. You see a headline and you run with it. I admit I did that, and that was wrong. Because when I began commenting on it, I commented from my own perception of it based on the headline and what I was seeing comments going up and down people's timelines. So that was wrong, because you have to get a holistic picture of what somebody's saying and the context of which they're saying it before you start interjecting your opinion. Otherwise, your opinion is going to have no base, or it's going to have a very light base. So here's the deal with the Ayesha Curry thing. All right. Whether you've been married before, whether you've never been married, that's irrelevant. People use these type of stories to create divides amongst themselves. We start dividing, who's done what, when, and how long, and we start measuring each other up like that. Here's the thing. I applaud her for her candor, her openness. Would I advise her saying that publicly? Yeah, that's an argument you could make. All right. For me, if I was feeling that way, I probably would not say that publicly, particularly if my wife and I had not had that conversation. Right. I would not want the first time she's hearing that from me doing a public interview. Let me make that point. So I would not want her, and I would hope that if she had that issue, right, or that concern, let's call it an issue, if that was something that emotionally bothered her or was an insecurity, I would hope that the first time I'm hearing about that is not from a public interview. All right. But now here's the challenge. They're in the public eye all the time. They're celebrities. So that's not always an easy thing to do. Right. So the way I look at, I applaud her for her openness. I think if you look at it the right way, it can actually help people once people get past their own insecurities about what she said. And she spoke to an insecurity of feeling inadequate, which is common amongst the human being. What she said is not anything anybody else goes through. It's just that social media has painted where we can always show our wins. We can hide our losses. Matter of fact, we've got now where we're so insecure, we don't want to call it loss. It's a lesson. It's this and that. We got to try to give it a different name, because we don't want to say that. We don't find a different name for a win, but we find a different name for a loss. But that's fine. Whatever you want to call it is fine. And I call it different things too. So I'm lumped into that category. All right. But we all have that insecurity, personally and professionally, of wanting to have want to have some level of attention, want to know that we matter to other people, want to know that we are attractive to other people, and there's varying degrees and levels to that. I think that, you had to have looked at the whole interview to, again, put the context to it. But I think that a lot of us jumped off the deep end. A lot of it, again, is motivated by our own insecurities, right? Because many of us, and I'm going to say many of us, have gone through and had those same feelings, and in some cases even acted out on them. Okay? So we're taking that internal insecurity that we have, and then we're allowing the Ayesha Curry situation to be something where we place that at that altar, and that's what's driving. I see a lot of the comments. So here's the thing. There was people arguing about should she even care? She should only want attention from her husband. That's from, and you typically got that from people that never been married, or they're so excited to they're maybe close to getting married and they're excited about it, and they just haven't been through they haven't been through the wars yet. They haven't been through the war. It's just like a kid that can't wait to be an adult. And then you become an adult and you're like, adulting sucks. Adulting sucks. Right? When you're an adult, right? You got to pay bills, right? Especially depending on how you create them. You go into work, you're creating some bit, you don't appreciate that. You don't appreciate being a child and going through childhood has its challenges too, but you don't appreciate that because you be so hell-bent on wanting to be grown that then you become grown and you're like, man, this sucks. Getting older sucks. You know what I mean? So that's how we operate. And so I equate this the same way. So a lot of those comments were from people that, have not really experienced it, to the extent to even know. So no, people want to know that even outside of their spouse, that they're attractive to somebody and can get attention. Now, does that mean that she wants every man in the world to jump in her inbox? No, that's not what she's saying. She just doesn't get the same level of attention that her husband gets because men and women operate in kind of different lanes and different factions, right? A lot of women, here's the thing about women. Now, I'm gonna make some folks upset because a lot of women have been the same woman that they get on, they've been. Uh-oh, Ron. They might jump off Facebook Live after I say this. Yeah. So that's why a lot of women they've been the wannabe wife and they've been the side chick. They've been both. So it's hard for them to not both in a lot of cases. It's hard for them to not both when they've been both. Right? And that's no not. That's just, you know what I mean? A lot of men have been both too. But I applaud Steph's support of his wife. I applaud that he supports her, her insecurities. That's what he should do as a husband. That's how you lead. See, a lot of you men, you don't know nothing about leadership. You think leading is because you're tall or you're strong than the next, or stronger than the next person. That's not leadership, particularly with family leadership. So I see a lot of these soft men, y'all, boy, you just don't know. They don't know nothing about the leadership. You're used to jumping around, and some of these guys they couldn't hold a woman if she had a handle on her back and on the front. What's up, Nia? How you doing? Wendy said, I wish I could be a teenager again. You know what? But I had a good time as a teenager. I ain't gonna lie to you. I had a great time as a teenager. Shout out to Denim and Diamonds here in Memphis. D&D. Got in that thing early, too. Wendy says adulting still sucks. Yeah, there's parts of it that does suck. And you have your days, Wendy. It could be great some days, but you got your days where it sucks too, girl. So I can't say I disagree with you. But yeah, I like the way Steph has spoken up. One of my mistakes in this was reading the headline and making judgments from the headline based on insecurities. And see, when I speak of insecurities, the insecure get upset. So if just saying the word insecurities gets some people, they get to wiggling in their chair. If I just say the word insecurity. They so insecure they get insecure about the word. But yeah, so from our insecurities we responded without even seeing the whole interview. All right? So if you're truthful with yourself, you'll reasonably admit that we all feel that way. We all can feel inadequate. We all can feel that we don't measure, we're not up to par. And particularly, think about this. So Ayesha Curry is 30 years old? She just turned 30. She's had 3 children. Okay. her business and her lifestyle that she's built, as I say that she's built, I know some people are coming with this stuff about, oh, she wouldn't have this if it wasn't for Steph. Hell, some of y'all wouldn't have your job if it wasn't for your mama or your grandmama. Well, I'm gonna leave y'all alone, man. I'm gonna leave y'all alone. All right. Some of y'all wives that built y'all up. Y'all running around talking about y'all this and that, and some of y'all, if it wasn't for your wife, you'd be, But again, I'm gonna leave y'all alone. I'm gonna leave you alone. All right. So she's built up her career. Yes, her husband had a platform. She still had to go build it. Them folks didn't let her on TV just because of Steph or because of his dad Dale or anybody else. She still had to go interview and show them what she's made of. They don't put her on them shows just because. She still had to have the skill set, right? So when you look at this whole thing, we all have that feeling. Let's say mother of 3. Okay, she's had 3 children. She's got to be a mother, right? She's got to be a wife. She's got to help take care of the household. She's got her business. She's got a lot she juggles. And wives do. It's a lot to juggle as a wife. I'm not a wife. I'm a husband. All right. But I've got a wife for almost 12 years. I've seen that. And I know the conversations we have. I know what I see. She does a hell of a lot. And I love her for all of that and then some. But she does a hell of a lot. And wives do. They juggle a lot. And so there's a lot of changes that come with that juggling too. You cross over into 30 and, and again, social media perpetuates that because we always have our best foot forward. So it's hard to always be, having to measure up to things. And in her line of work and things like that, she doesn't carry herself, and she's not in these places where she's always going to get this, attention and things like that. Certainly not like her husband does, because again, men and women think different. Women are much more open to kind of throwing themselves at someone like a Steph Curry than men are at Ayesha. And there's a lot of reasons for that. There's people have men tend to have a different type of respect level than sometimes women do. What up, Greg? D Young, what's up, frat? So that's what you get. That's what you get. And so I commend her. I think it hopefully will inspire more people to have conversation. No, I would not have said that publicly. What she said, what she was quoted as saying, particularly if I had not had that conversation with my wife, or my wife had not had that conversation with me. But I do understand it, and in their position as being celebrities, it does make sense that there are things that are going to be spoken. And listen, I've heard the conspiracy theory that, Ayesha tends to just open her mouth during the playoffs. You never hear from her about anything related to Steph and blah 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 until the NBA playoffs start. I can see that, the conspiracy theory of this just being attention. Them folks get enough attention. She didn't need more attention that way. You know what I mean? As far as a headline story and that sort of thing, particularly while the playoffs are going on. You know what I mean? Because that's when Steph's going to be laser focused on his craft and what they're doing now in the series against the Houston Rockets. But for me, I just think that it opens up a conversation of how we interact as people, and particularly between men and women, and the level of communication that we need to have and the level of empathy we need to have, as we all have varying degrees of how we feel about attention. So I know the Ayesha Curry story is going to continue for a little bit because it strikes at the heart of relationships, which I know we love, like, fat kid loves cake on social media. Like I told you how people hate the word insecurity. They're like moths to the flame if you just say the word relationship. Particularly as it relates to across gender. Same gender too, I guess, for all that matter. Just relationships, period. So, Derek Sykes, what's up, boy? How you doing? So anyway, let me transition from that as we're talking about women. Sunday is Mother's Day. Okay? And that's a holiday that, we've set aside to recognize mothers. All right? My mother is still living. And for many of you that are listening to this podcast or you're on social media listening to this, your mother may have already transitioned this life. So I definitely want to send you a shout out because Mother's Day can be tough for some people for a couple of reasons. One, if your mother has already transitioned life and however that occurred. Two, depending on what relationship you have with your mother today. I encourage you that if your relationship with your mother is not the very best, now is a good time to invest in that. There are varying degrees of things that can happen, but at the end of the day, life is short. So if you're dealing in a lot of pettiness, let's move on from that. Kaylin, how you doing? Let's move on from the pettiness of that, and you have one mother. Okay. So here's an opportunity, not just to put on a show for her for Sunday because it's Mother's Day. Not just to go to her church because it's Mother's Day. But invest in your relationship with your mother. Because many of the folks that are listening to this podcast, if whose mother, again, has already transitioned or they never knew their mother, they'll tell you that leaves a gaping hole. Some people have recently lost their mother. You may have recently had to experience the transition of your mother's life. And so this is the first Mother's Day without her. Be open-minded and be sensitive to that. And I want to take this time to wish all mothers and mother figures, because you may not have birthed your own children for whatever reason, and that reason is yours and yours alone. But if you've been a mother figure to somebody, I recognize you on this Mother's Day. And then for those who did birth their own natural children, for those who have adopted children, happy Mother's Day to you ladies. You're to be saluted. You're to be commended for the work that you do. And none of us are perfect. None of us, men, women, dog, cat, fish, bird, none of us are perfect. But now's a good time to connect with your mother if you have not done so. And take the lead on that. Some mothers, depending on how they were raised themselves, they may not understand or have the level of character to come and get out of their pettiness and their shame and their guilt and all that type of stuff. You may need to be the one to lead that. So you may need to lead mama, because she may not know, or she may not understand. She may not have that level of, or she may not have the level of character. Don't wait for her. You be the leader if she's not. But connect with your mother, man. All right? And if you hadn't seen your mother in a long time, go see her. Go check on her. Okay? You may find that you may get an experience that can carry you, man, for the rest of your life. But I'm extremely fortunate. My mother is living. And we'll be connecting, some on this weekend. And to my wife, Kim, who we have our 3 daughters. Mother's Day is special in our household from their standpoint, and so we'll be involved in that as well. Yeah, my guy Greg Bernard with Data Maxim says, true, life is short. Yeah, life is short, brother. It is. And so connect with your mother. Shout out to all mothers coming up here on this Mother's Day. So thank you so much for checking out episode 93 of the Minding Your Business podcast. It's available as always on all the major podcast platforms: Apple, Google, SoundCloud, Spotify, our iHeartRadio, YouTube. and then at themybpodcast.com. Again, we're brought to you by the Binge Podcast Network. That's on a binge.com. Shout out to everybody on Spreaker.com. Thank you so much. Everybody that's on Facebook Live, thank you. Listen, have a great weekend. Enjoy Mother's Day with your mothers in your family, your mother figures. Make sure you support them. We're going to be back on next week. I'm traveling on next week. I'm going to be in Nebraska and Kansas, having a good time and compelling banks to invest in low to moderate income communities, which is very important. And so make sure you're holding your bank accountable. Don't just stick money in the bank and they're not lending you no money and they're not being fiduciary partners and serving their fiduciary duty to the community. If they're not, take your money out of there, take it somewhere else. All right. I'm Champ Ron. This is the Minding Your Business podcast. Entrepreneurship, real estate, trending news. There's no business like minding your own. Peace be with you.
What we do here is go back.